Hello and welcome to the third episode of Behind the Service. I am your host, Sunny Perry. Tonight, I have a special guest, Andy Connor, who has helped over 277 sex-trafficked women by founding the Genesis Project. Without further ado, I want to introduce to you Andy so we can go behind his mission of the Genesis Project. Andy, welcome to Behind the Service.
Hey, Sunny, thanks for having me. This is a great thing you're doing, and I appreciate to be here. I'm happy to share my story.
Well, thank you. I appreciate what you're doing, and I also appreciate your patience over the past several months of the relaunch of the show Behind It All. And I've learned a lot through those couple months of watching some movies and just kind of educating myself on what you're doing. And I'm really excited to share your mission because a lot of people do not know what's going on behind the scenes, or they don't see what you see every day, and they don't think that sex trafficking is real. So I'm really excited to dive deep into your mission and to your journey and to who you are.
Okay.
So
I'm ready.
All right, I am too. Okay, so we're going to start with who is Andy Connor and where did you begin your journey of becoming a police officer? So let's go back to signing on with the Seahawks. I think that'd be a great place to start.
Okay, well, yeah, well, a little bit before that, I grew up in a real small town in Northern California called Klamath River, and my dad was ex-military. He's a Korean War veteran, and after that he went to law enforcement. He's a California highway patrolman down in the Southern California area. So that's kind of where I grew up hearing cop stories and stuff like that. Then my mom was the athlete of the family, and she did a lot of track and softball and stuff like that, and I kind of got that from her. And so I loved sports all my whole life and played sports my whole life. And so from that small town, went to high school, played football, and then did really good. And I had a lot of Pac-10 schools back then. It was Pac-10, now it's Pac-12. But Oregon and some other people were looking at me, and they offered me a scholarship to go play football at University of Oregon. So I went up there, played for 5 years, and when that was over, the Seahawks were calling, and the Giants and the Saints. So because I really didn't think about it much. As Seahawks were the closest, so I chose them, and I got up there in '92, and that's how I got to Seattle. And just shortly after that, I played some preseason games. I got put on waivers. It just means I was released to another team, but I didn't have an agent at the time. So I stayed in Seattle. Tom Flores was the coach. He told me, hey, stick around. We might pick you back up. The good thing is I met my wife up here. We have in January coming up. January is our 25th anniversary.
Oh, congratulations.
And, yeah, thanks. And then so I stayed up here. A couple years later, I signed with the Rams when they went to St. Louis. My goal was always to play professional football. Unfortunately, right before the season started, after I had made the team, I blew my shoulder out, and it was a career-ending injury. So that was it. So my plan was to play some football and then go into law enforcement because my dad was in law enforcement. I enjoyed all his stories, and all his friends were in law enforcement. So anyway, that got cut short. So I came in Seattle area is King County, and the King County Sheriff is here. I went on some ride-alongs with some friends, and went through the application process, signed up, and got hired in December of 1997.
Wow. So just since December 1997, you have been in King County as a police officer.
Yep.
And so I want to start on that journey of becoming a police officer in 1997. When you started seeing some things that had touched your heart, that had started you on this journey that you're on now, the mission that you're on now. So let's start with the first sightings that you saw, the first encounters.
Well, the area I work is in the city of SeaTac, which is the same as the airport's right there. You have the international airport, and you have the I-5 corridor. SeaTac is it's a perfect storm of sorts when it comes to trafficking and prostitution because it's a 24/7 city. It has the most hotel rooms in that city than anywhere else in the state of Washington. So I think the last statistics were over 100,000 people come in during the day, just traveling through and passing through. And the city itself is only 35,000 people and residents. So we triple the people just from the airport. So just some real back history on SeaTac and Pacific Highway in general, from that runs through King County and north is Snohomish County and south is Pierce County. That highway for decades has been a hub for prostitution. Um, there's when I started to do some research on it, I guess it's been well known for girls and for sex buyers throughout the country where the city of SeaTac and that Pacific Highway was. And I think we talked a little bit about this prior to this interview. Gary Ridgway, which was the Green River Killer, a very prolific serial killer. He used to work in the city of SeaTac, and he would pick up girls on the highway. And once he was done with them, he'd kill them, and he would dump them in the Green River, and that's why he was called the Green River Killer. That was back in the 80s and 90s. He was caught early 2000 and convicted. So when I went into the city, of course, I didn't know any of this going into it, but obviously it was quite obvious. On the highway, they call it the highway, the blade, the strip, girls would walk. Just, most people, I think in general, by either movies or anything else, just know how, what prostitution is. It's been around forever. So girls would be walking the highway, dressed in a certain manner and doing certain things that would lead you to believe that's exactly what they're doing. So we saw a lot of this in SeaTac. And we have special laws in SeaTac in areas that have bad or high prostitution activity for these different laws. It's called loitering for the purposes of prostitution. I don't need to be a detective or undercover to catch these girls doing this. I just need to know certain things, how they're dressed, what they're doing, how they act, can be probable cause to make an arrest. So I was arresting these girls by the hundreds in the early years, from 2001 to 2005, 6, and became fairly well known for it from other agencies. Other detective groups would ask me questions because the girls that are on the street are in what's called the life. The life is essentially criminal, is different from what you and I are used to. There's a criminal element who lives in their own life, and they have their own set of rules. And prostitution, trafficking is the same thing. If you're talking to a survivor or anyone in the field with law enforcement, when you mention the life, are you in the life? They know exactly what that means. It's a whole nother life, just as it says, except it's all the things that you think of: prostitution, crime, assault, rape, all that stuff is in that life. And so I had been doing this for quite a while, but from 2001 up until 2005-ish, toward the end of 2005, after hundreds of arrests, the girls, we never had much of a conversation. It was mostly about the probable cause, what you were doing, about the cat and mouse game, if you will, where I would do what I needed to do to catch them, to arrest them. They would do what they would try to do to escape that, or to say I wasn't doing this or I was doing so. That was the conversation. It wasn't much about their story or why they were there until two individuals, after all these years, finally came up to me and changed that.
Completely changed your course in your life and the way that you handled the rest of these women and digging deep. Right. So at first it was just, you were doing your duty. You were doing your job. You were, taking them off the streets, and, it was illegal. But now let's start with the first woman the first actually little girl who changed your life, that you first arrested.
Yeah. So there's the three that did it, and this is the story on my website and everything else. The three that did it, the two first ones are actually older, and the third one was the juvenile. So the two first ones I had arrested over and over and over again, and I finally said, hey, I'm sick of arresting you guys. Why do I have to keep seeing you out here? And once I kind of delved into that, like, personally, what are you doing? Why are you still out here? Then they just opened up to me and told me their story, and told me how they got into prostitution and how their pimps treat them and what they do, and how people have told them, not just me but other people, just walk away. Why don't you just walk away and do something else? Then they explained to me how they have all their support structures, and all their way of living has been taken from them. And to walk away into what they said. Well, what can I do? I can't do anything. So the more they told me, I was realizing yeah, you're right. You can't just walk away. You have no place to live. You have no education. You have no support systems anywhere. You have no job skill training or job skills, period. Because a lot of these girls, even though they're adults now, were trafficked way back when they were in their early teens. So they didn't learn a lot of this stuff. They came from, these girls come from all areas of life, but the majority girls come from broken homes, abusive foster care, or their own parents abuse them sexually, usually
Mm-hmm.
uncles, brothers, whatever. So they've already come damaged into this lifestyle, and then a pimp or a trafficker they are real specific in how to isolate them and to systematically take things away from them to make them completely dependent on them. Regardless how bad they treat them, they are dependent on those traffickers. So I started learning this, and I'm thinking, wow, okay, my eyes were kind of opened up with these two gals that were telling me this. I spent the night, one gal, trying to get a hold of her mom in Idaho, trying to figure out a way how we can get her back to Idaho, because I finally was a little more, had some empathy for her. Like, okay, this is not all on you. So we spent the night. I'm on the phone with people in Idaho. We're trying to, I'm looking up stuff on whatever I can do to try to find, because this was just brand new to me, trying to help her out because I had compassion for her after that. And then the next step was, okay, there's got to be some resources for these girls. There's resources for DUI aftermath, drug addicted people, all these different things, domestic violence. There's programs. There's all these things. So there's got to be something for these girls. And so, no, there's not. I couldn't find anything. So I'm doing research. I'm still contacting girls, but now it's a complete different approach. It's like, I get a girl for probable cause to make arrest, so I stop her, and I'm really curious. What is your story? How did you get into this lifestyle? So now I'm basically going back to school from 2005 to even to present day. I learn stuff all the time, but the third girl was only a couple months later, and she was a young girl. And this is the girl that broke me. This is the one that changed. Where I had a different perspective, but now I'm going to do something about it because that is not right. So the story for her is 2 o'clock in the morning. I catch her loitering for the purposes of prostitution, which is a crime. I stop her, do the same thing I've told the other girls. I said, okay, I don't want to arrest you. I just want to hear your story. I knew she was young, and the difference from her to a lot of girls, and a lot of girls have aspects of this, but her, she's kind of burnt into my mind out of the thousands of girls that I've talked to, because there was just like a lifeless, soulless, no light in her eyes, and it's hard to explain because I just can't explain it. It's kind of dead inside type thing, where she didn't really care that I was there. She didn't really care that she was under arrest. Her life was so much more tragic and traumatized that me contacting her as a police officer and you might be arrested for prostitution on her radar, that's nothing compared to what she's been through. So I'm picking up on this. So I tell her, same thing. So tell me how you got started. What is the deal? Why are you out here? How did you get out here? And so she told me. So at 12 years old, her father, she doesn't have a mom. She doesn't know if she's dead or gone. She had no mom. So at 12 years old, her father, who was a drug dealer, came into some issues with some of his drug dealings and owed debts. So he pulled her out of school and started selling her for sexual favors to pay off these debts. So he sold her from one to the next to the next to the next to get out of his own debts. So she's telling me this, and it's very matter of fact. I mean, I think she's so numb and dead inside that it's just, she has no reason to lie to me. She's not gaining sympathy from me by doing this, because I already told her. I told her flat out, before you tell me this story, I'm not taking you to jail, all right? I just want to know your story. So she had nothing to gain by dramatizing something. It was just I felt that she was being very honest with me. So he was selling her, and this is how she got into prostitution. He got arrested down the line, maybe when she was 13 or 12, 14 or 15, and went to prison. So now she has no other family. This is him. This is it. So he goes to jail. Now she's on the streets because she's been pulled out of school for several years now. Now you have a girl that has, I mean, you look at life structures, if you just look at basic life things, housing, support, whatever, schooling, education, that kind of stuff. I'm looking at her, she has nothing. She has no support. She has no, I mean, you name it. I do, when I do trainings for sex trafficking, I do an analogy of a wagon wheel. You have the hub that's in the middle, which is your life, and you have the support structures, the spokes. All those spokes represent a different support structure. Education, your family, spiritual, housing, all that kind of stuff, a job. So she had absolutely no support structures at all. She's missing everything. So she is in survival mode by selling herself and getting enough money to stay at a hotel, and she's now being bounced around from pimp to pimp to pimp. Who, she has quotas and all these just horrible stuff. So now I'm talking to her at 2, 3 in the morning, and I think this is early 2006. And after talking to the other 2 girls, I'm like, okay, that's it. I have this kind of a weird vision. It's not a vision so much as I'm imagining her in this pit, and I'm trying to reach her and I can't get her because I don't have any resources. I don't know how to help her. I mean, she is so far gone with how she cannot survive without doing this. Is like I'm dumbfounded at this time. I'm heartbroken for her, but I'm upset that there's nothing that can be done for her.
Well, and one thing you and I spoke about was that the very person who was supposed to be taking care of her and loving her and protecting her was giving her out for sex at 12 years old and selling her. And so she's never been protected. Her soul, everything was taken from her, something so valuable that was just given away by her own father. And then now, I mean, no wonder why she was lifeless. And the analogy of you saying that you were seeing her in this pit and you're trying to help her, but you didn't have any resources. And like you said, what year was this? 2000,
early 2006. Yeah.
So early 2006. And this was when the height of Craigslist and the sex trafficking was high on there. Is that correct? Was that still?
That was before Craigslist.
Okay.
But, so what happened was this was all back then. Most of the prostitution trafficking was still on the roads.
Okay.
Either corner points or highways. The internet was just getting, its legs, if you will. I mean, the internet was out and stuff, but it wasn't. The Craigslist came along a little bit after that.
Okay.
But like you said, the lifeless. I can't reach her. I can't do anything for her. And I'm a dad, and you're a mother, and we think as parents, and anybody would think as parents, not anybody, but the people that we associate with, you do anything for your kids.
Yep.
And this guy flipped that, where not only is he not the protector as a father, he's not the one that is supposed to support her and take care of her. He is doing the exact opposite. So I can't even imagine what her thought process is of what normal is, or how broken and damaged this girl is. And then it makes sense to me where I see this lifeless person.
Absolutely.
Because he just sucked it out of her by doing everything that he just did to her. Now she's by herself and only knows prostitution as a survival mechanism. Well, that was it for me.
That was the point. And if you're watching this right now and you just logged on, we are with Andy Connor, who founded the Genesis Project and has helped over 277 sex trafficked women. And so if you're watching this live, hashtag live. If you're watching this on the replay, hashtag replay. If you have any questions, please put them below or message us. And Andy is more than happy to answer any of the questions that you may have. So Andy, so you've shed a light on sex trafficking for myself, because I think everybody has an idea of what they think it is, or they think, hey, you know what, this is a life that these women want, this is what they want to do, or you know what, that's just what she wants. She's a promiscuous woman, or whatever the case may be. But your heart started, you've encountered well over 277 women, and that's not the case. The case that you've seen are starting from really young ages, mothers, fathers. In one of the videos that I watched that you were in, there was a teenage girl who was lost, who ran away, who was just a lost soul, who got caught up in a pimp who loved her and she felt safe and got caught in that situation and didn't feel worthy. So there's so many cases, and I hope who's ever watching this, you can walk away with a different perspective on sex trafficking, and you can realize that it happens in your town. It could happen to your child. It could happen to anybody and anybody around you. So I just want to shed light on that. So moving
Yeah.
forward, Andy, you encounter this broken girl. How do you, now you know there's no resources out there, there's nowhere to go, and you know that you have to do something, and you go home and you talk to your wife and you start this journey that to where you're at today. So how did the journey start? Because it's, you had a huge undertaking at that time.
Yeah, it was, well, it was a long process. After that encounter with her, I continued to research. I continued to talk to other girls, contact them on the streets, and all that stayed the same. But the change was is like, okay, I talked to my wife. I said, I really think that I'm supposed to be doing this. Not only do I think that I'm supposed to be doing this, I think that God has put it on my heart to do something for them. Now, I have no idea what that meant or what it was. I just told her about it, and she instantly said, I think you're right. I think you should do something like, but I'm like, I don't know what to do. So I just did what I'm looking at other programs for domestic violence stuff like, so I talked to some supervisors and, unfortunately back then, more so back then than now, but now it's still the same way. The mentality is prostitution is a victimless crime. You have consenting people with consenting buyers. They're doing consensual things. And though it's a crime, technically it's what they call a victimless crime, where it's not really a crime. That is not the case. I've dealt with I don't even know how many. Some of the stats, probably over 3,000 people within 15 years or so involved in trafficking, whether it be juvenile females, adult females, sex buyers, and pimps. Over 3,000, just based on some blocks of time from 2009 to 12 that we actually kept the stats. And there are sex workers who are advocating that the prostitution would be made legal because this is their choice and this is how they want to make a living. That is a very small percentage of these girls is what we're talking about. And not only that, what I would say to them is that, yeah, if you're a sex worker and you're this small percentage and you want to sell yourself online and that's how you want to make a living, what you may not realize is that once you insert yourself either by your own will or somebody else forces you, once you insert yourself into the life of prostitution, life of trafficking, that's a criminal element lifestyle. You don't know who's going to come to the door. Now, there's a lot of emphasis put on pimps, that they're the brutal, mean ones, and they are. I got no sympathy for them at all. However, most violence comes from the sex buyers. And if you talk to a survivor and you ask them about a bad date, they've all had them. A bad date is essentially when everything that they discuss, I want sex for this much money, and then that happens and everyone goes their separate ways. That's just a regular prostitution date. A bad date is an individual doesn't do that. What is discussed does not happen. A rape happens instead, or a violent assault happens, because some of these guys are extremely sick individuals, and the end of the pendulum. On one end is a Gary Ridgway, who killed them and then did horrific things after they were dead.
I
And
mean,
you
how
have
many women did he kill? I just want everybody to know, because some people don't even know who Gary Ridgway is, but he
Gary
killed
Ridgway is a serial killer, and he picked up girls off the street that were being prostituted and trafficked, mostly juveniles, and he killed them. I think he admitted to, I have to look it up, over 50 that he killed, but they're estimated much more, maybe closer to 70 or 80. He pled in a deal that he would, instead of getting the death penalty, he would plead, or he made a deal with the prosecutor. He would go back and find all the girls that he dumped at the river, so the families could have some closure in a ceremony, a funeral ceremony, so they would know where they're at. So to do that as opposed to get death. So he went back and found as many as they could. It's just, I mean, if you Google the Green River Killer or Gary Ridgway, that whole thing will pop up. He was just a sick individual. That's one end of the pendulum, and the other end of the pendulum is just the guys who just want sex for money and don't do anything else. Then you have everybody in between that has, it is so common when any girl that's been in the lifestyle for a few months has had a bad day, and that just simply means they were robbed, they were beaten, they were raped, they were injured in some way, and then a lot of times they are killed. And it's not by the pimp, it's by the sex buyer. Mm-hmm. So that's what I would say to the girls that are saying, this is my choice, I want to be a sex worker. You're putting yourself into a lifestyle that you have no control over anymore. And it's not just the Johns or the sex buyers. Pimps will troll the internet too, and we've had kidnappings and all kinds of other things going on. So the lifestyle itself, the life is dangerous just being in it, despite whether you choose it or not. So I think I went off on a rabbit trail there.
Well, no, that's good to mention, because I think a lot of people watching this, including myself, before I educated myself the last several months talking to you and just kind of understanding the realm of sex trafficking. I mean, I have a 14-year-old daughter, and just understanding how they can get into that lifestyle, and understanding how watching the extreme of a 16, 17-year-old girl who ran away, who was lost, who didn't want to get in sex trafficking, but got caught up with the wrong crowd. And then she got stuck in it, to a 12-year-old who's being sold out by her own father to somebody who's stolen off their front porch to being sex trafficked. So there are many different facets of it, but we have to I just want my viewers to understand and really be educated on it, because I'm walking away after meeting you with a totally different education and thought process when I do hear about these stories, because I always thought, oh, well, that's just a life they want. They're choosing this lifestyle. And it, like you said, it's a very small percentage of those women that are choosing that lifestyle. And as we get to the end of the interview, a lot of our viewers, you will see that a lot of the 277 women now have beautiful lives, and they're out there inspiring a lot of other women, and they're out of it, but they could have never come out of that lifestyle without the Genesis Project and without that help. So, and we'll get there, but I just want everybody to know there's a great ending to this.
Yeah. And the biggest thing is a lot of these girls are young. So you think about just a normal young girl, a 14, 15-year-old, how emotional they are, how, they're already insecure. But you add all the sexual trauma that happened to them, and then they're real easy to be manipulated. And then manipulation starts with pimps or sex or traffickers that are very, very, they have a good knowledge of how to manipulate and how to coerce. And the language itself for trafficking is by fraud, force, or coercion. So you'll think, these girls that think they're a girlfriend to their boyfriend, and it's not that way. They've tricked them, and then somehow they find themselves prostituting, but they justify it by, well, I'm gonna, I love him, and this is what he says he needs to do for our family. It's always this pseudo family. That's why the pimp is called the daddy. In the phones that we've confiscated, we've had in the phones where you write in who this name is. There's daddy, that's a pimp, and there's dad, that's biological dad. We've seen both of them, but they make them more than anything else. The movies dramatize it, and Pretty Woman is not how things work out. But that's the fantasy from the girl's perspective, is that's how they want it to work out, whether it's through some great John buyer that comes by and sweeps them off their feet, or the pimp that they think they're in love with is going to do the same thing. We only have to do this for a few years. I'll give you a perfect example, and I can't remember if I told you or not, but I interviewed a girl that was 17, and she'd been doing this for about 2 years. And I was in the street telling her everything I'm telling people now, like, this is not going to work out the way you think it's going to work out. Her exact words were, I only have to do this for another 2 years and make this much money. This is what he told me. As soon as I make this much money, we're getting married, we're going to have a house, and it's going to have, I quote, a white picket fence. this is the fantasy that's built into them, and they will. Because when I first started doing this, how is this guy getting you to do this? This, prostitute yourself. How is he? What is the mechanism that he's using? What is the big trick? And there really isn't none. He sold them on a fantasy, and then but they fill the void of all the insecurities because they overly put attention on them when they're grooming them. They give them what they want. They find out the voids and the areas that are lacking in their lives, and they fill that. They're experts at that. It's amazing how, I hate to give them any credit at all, but they're very good at that. And then once they know, and they know when the girls have fallen for them, they know, and then they turn them. Then it's okay. Now we're a family. Now this is what I need you to do. And they might be reluctant at first, but once they're into it, they're down the hole and they can't get out. The girls that have kind of fight back. The coercion part is they'll film or take nude pictures of them or film them having sex with them or somebody else, or it'll be a gang rape type situation. They'll film it and they'll say, okay, once they feel that they're trying, like, this is not what I signed up for. This is not, you said we're going to do this and you're still making me do this. I want out. And then they'll start doing the blackmail thing. They'll say, okay, if you leave, I will post all these pictures on the internet. If you leave, I will send this video of you and us having sex to your mom or to this person. Then it keeps them out of shame staying in it. So that's just one trick. The other trick is violence. I will kill you. I will kill your parents. I will kill your sister. I will make your sister come work for me and you can go. Of course, she doesn't want that to happen. We had the first two girls that were in the Genesis Project back in 2011 were sisters, a 16 and a 15. How he got the 16 was telling her, if you don't come work for me, I will take your sister, your younger sister. So she came, and he took the younger sister anyway. So, I mean, there's so many different ways how they can get trapped and tricked into it. But once they're into it, and once these guys take pictures or film things or threaten, it's force, fraud, or coercion. So you're starting to get the picture how they can't just walk away.
No.
There's shame. There's all these things that are included that makes it extremely difficult to get out of that.
Well, in one of the stories that I watched, the 17-year-old who had run away, she had actually come back home. Well, then she ran away again because all the kids at school were shaming her. They were making her feel, like she was this prostitute and she was, she needed to have that shame on her. So she ran away again and went back to the pimp.
Right.
And he, of course, used that manipulation, used that, dragging her back in.
You. I accept you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. And you're perfect and loved on her and played the game, the manipulation, the soulless game that they play. And he used her. And then finally she was able to come back home, but now she's a stronger woman. But seeing how he manipulated her and her mindset, how society didn't accept her again, how the children, didn't accept her again. And that's where I'm hoping with this interview with you, not only can we bring light to the Genesis Project, but we can bring light to these girls and a different perspective to, if somebody does hear about someone's lifestyle or something were to come out about somebody's lifestyle or their old lifestyle, that you'll love on them and that you'll understand that there's always a backstory to why somebody does something.
Yeah, and the girl you're talking about, she does a great job of explaining her mentality and how she felt trapped and manipulated and how her thinking was all just confusion and constant, like she didn't know what to do or how to act, and she lashed out at her parents. It just completely messes them up. I mean, fries their brains. They're young and they're still developing in that process that is just being messed with. I mean, I can't even imagine.
No, and he told her he was going to marry her and he loved her and she was the only one and, all these things until she realized that it was just a game. And so but it was just, if anybody has a question about what story I'm talking about, I'd be more than happy to send you the links of everything that I have educated myself on over the last several months that Andy has provided for me. But moving forward, so now you have the heart for these women and your wife is on board and she is you are both on fire because there's nowhere to go. There's nothing to do to help these women. So you're now the Genesis Project. How did you start that? You had, like we talked about, you had a huge undertaking. Where was ground zero? Obviously, it was with educating yourself on these women. It took about
Yeah.
3 years before you
hmm
really got to get everything up and running.
Yeah. 3 years from 2006 to 2009, I was just, after that young girl, I was full board in educating myself, trying to find resources, which I couldn't find, but reaching out to different people, organizations, even though they're so minute. Children of the Night, Dr. Lois Lee was one of them, who's been doing this for quite a while, but um, trying to find support from supervisors, which was kind of far and few between. Um, but at the same time, that mentality, victimless crime, was still in there. So anyway, so I do the research. I get with I'm driving my beat one night, and I see a block party going on down at the south end, which is probably the worst area of the city, and it's one of the track is really prolific for prostitution. A block party. It was a woman from my church was volunteering there, and they're giving out clothing and food to a really impoverished area. And I'm just like, oh, what are you guys doing? She told me, who's behind this? And it was a charity called the Corridor, and it was a faith-based charity, did clothing drives and food drives, and they invited me to one of their board meetings because I worked that area, so they were wanting to get ideas of what else they can do. So in 2009, I went to a board meeting. And I said, hey, they asked me, what is the biggest problem you see? So of course I give them a crash course in prostitution and trafficking, and some of the people were just astounded and just it touched their heart, and they were just on fire for it from then on out. We want to help you. We want to do whatever it takes for you to do this. And so they had a building right there, right in the middle of this whole thing. So the idea was initially was to have a safe house, but I knew that safe houses, from going from a street to a safe house, is just a long leap. A drop-in center would be better, where they can get immediate services. Because a lot of organizations have done this, and to each its own, but a lot of them will do research and funding before they start it because they want to start debt-free, and that's great. Because I see it every night, I was so wanting to give them something right now. I wanted to I want them to have something right now. So they let me come under their 501c3. That was in 2009. So now I'm thinking about a name, the Genesis Project, the Genesis, biblical. It's a new beginning. I wanted to have a new life. Hope for a new life was the tag. So I still didn't know what all this entailed. I'm doing research I knew what they needed. They needed love and support in a non-judgmental environment. That was like the key, easy, no-brainer one. So the idea was to have them come into the center and get, whatever. At the time, it was just food and clothing. That was it. We had nothing else. So, but the center wasn't open. It was still the corridor. I just came under their umbrella to start building this whole thing and trying to work out what it is I wanted and how much it was going to cost and all this stuff. So from 2006 to 2009, did the research. From 2009 to 2011, we're doing this whole process of developing the name, what we're going to do, what resources we're going to offer, and it's all based on what the girls have told me over the years. How we're going to fund it. Now we're getting into nonprofit world, which I don't know how to do this. So luckily, there was a lot of people that had a heart. We had an attorney gal that was helping me do the articles of incorporation, the bylaws, all these things that I had no idea. So we build it and create the website, Facebook page, and then right when we're starting to get some momentum, we do some small fundraisers. The corridor loses their funding. So this is early 2011, spring of 2011, and they're going to lose their building. They're going to lose everything because they've lost their funding. So now I'm under their umbrella, which is crashing on me. So, well, maybe we can contact the IRS and see if we can just take over their 501c, because I already knew the process to get a 501c3 was difficult and long. So lo and behold, there was a form to do it. We applied for it, and we took over their 501c3. And the same time that they went under, we took it over, and that was in the summer of 2011, and we opened it up August 31st, 2011 was the first night we opened. So much was going on. At this time, a documentary was being filmed. It was called Rape for Profit. So we had guys from the film production crew riding with us. They had been riding with us for a year before that. And through this, so the night that we did the grand opening, they were riding with us. They filmed it. So in Rape for Profit, you'll see the first two girls walk through the doors, and they were sisters. And they came through the first two. We had a grand opening. It's all in the film. So that's how it started. We started with zero money. We did right before we opened it up. A friend of mine who's still on the board with me, he and my boys, and he did a week-long renovation of a back room, put a shower in and some other stuff. So we started. We spent the rest of our money, and so we were broke. So everyone was volunteering, but we had a warm place, and we had food and we didn't have clothes. We had a blanket, and I was shocked that the first girls that came in, the blankets that we gave them were like, it was like they're getting a new car. It was just so amazing to see the transformation. And I think it was more just the love and not non-judgment coming into a place like that. It was just, it was very cool to watch the transformation when I would bring them in, and they would be met with a volunteer that would just love on them and say, hey, we want to give you this. This is a blanket. And it's just, just that simple act was so profound. And to this day, we have so much more we give them now, but to this day, that I remember that so vividly, that giving that blanket, and they loved it so much. They were just so thankful for it. It was amazing. So that's how 2011 it started. And then, as time goes on, we build it and programs happen, more funding and learning how to run a profit. So many people contributed to helping me do this. And there's no way in a million years that I would have been able to do it without all the people that came around me, either law enforcement or the volunteers. My wife gave up her job as she was a professional makeup artist, and she's very good and very sought after by Nordstrom and other places. She contracted herself, and she gave that whole thing up just to help me do it, because I couldn't do it without her. And so many other people did too, but that's how it opened. And then we had that documentary happen, and we had a documentary, another one happened on the heels of that. But it's really cool that we got to capture the first two girls. We did the trifecta. We rescued the first one, the 16-year-old. She told us her 15-year-old sister's out there. We found her. We do a sting on her pimp. The pimp comes to the hotel. We arrest him, and the bottom girl's with her. And that's just another component of a girl that's been with him longer, and she sometimes runs it for him to isolate him further from law enforcement. Long story short, we turned her around to where she testified against him. So the pimp went to jail. She was rescued. The bottom girl was rescued, and two girls were rescued out. And even to this day, she follows our Facebook and will say stuff every now and then. Thanks for helping me get away from him. Now she's back with her family. So it was pretty cool to capture that whole thing. From usually that's very rare to happen in one night.
In one night, and you had the film crew with you, so that's
the film crew was with us, so it was pretty cool.
Well, and one thing that you had mentioned when we were talking over the last couple days, that was really profound to me, is when you brought them in. Every time that somebody has encountered them, from whether it was at age 12, 17, or whatever it was, somebody always wanted to take something from them.
Right.
They were never given anything. They were never given love. They were never given anything. So when they walked into the Genesis Project, they were given blankets. They were given hugs. They were given love. They were given, at the Genesis Project, they weren't asked for anything besides just to be themselves and just to come in and make themselves at home. And that's something that really hit me. And watching that video too, just the way that she was hugging on you, and she was just like, she was thanking you, and nothing had really happened yet. You had just brought her to the facility, and that was it.
Yeah. I think I think it's like if someone's sick and they get a shot of penicillin, they get that instant relief. I think I told you, or maybe I didn't, but when I was in college, I had a real If I had too much of anything like sugar or something, too much of anything would make me break out in hives, and sometimes just stress of finals or whatever. And one time I had a huge breakout, and I just broke out everywhere. It was just horrible, just a horrible feeling of itchy and swollen. I went into the doctor, the team doctor gave me a shot. Within an hour, it was gone. And I feel like that's kind of when they come into the center, they get a shot of penicillin, of that what they've been living is, it's not cured by any
Yeah.
means, but they get that relief,
Yep.
that instant relief. Because being in law enforcement, when you go to jail or any institutionalized thing, you're going to a very cold atmosphere type thing. And so when I was trying to explain to the girls, I have a drop-in center. I want you to come take a look at it. They're thinking to themselves, oh, I've been to juvie, I've been to whatever, it's a cold, institutionalized place, I don't want to go. The biggest problem I had initially was convincing them, no, it's not like that. So when we developed the Genesis Project, it's like coming into the home. The outside doors don't look very good, and the area is certainly not good. But when they come into the doors, and this happened for the several hundred that I brought in myself, their face looks up and they're like, wow. And it's almost the same. They say the same thing. I did not expect this.
Yeah.
It's because you're walking into like your living room. We have couches and sofas and TVs and pictures on the wall. It's just really inviting. And I did that on purpose, obviously, because of what they've been used to. I want them to come into a home. I want them to come into a living room, and I want them to know, hey, this is for you. This whole place is just for you. No other victim, and I'm sympathetic to other victims of other crimes, but this is solely specifically for this population. So I really make it a point to say, you're special, you're valued, and a lot of times when, as a police officer in a uniform talking to these girls on the streets, it was hard to get through. So one of the tricks that I used, it wasn't a trick because I really meant it. And I don't think they're never talked to like this. I'll sit them down if I don't feel like I'm getting through to them. I'll say, listen, you are just as valuable as I am. I'm no more important than you are. Do you not believe that? I might be in law enforcement. I might have a position of you and I are having a conversation about a crime, and I have authority over you and this and that and the other. But what I try to say, hey, you're just as valuable as I am. I'm no more important than you are. You're just as important as I am. Then I follow up with that with the Genesis Project and what we're doing. And, I try to make it exclusive. I say, you're the only, you can get into this. These other people can't even get into this place. You can, and you can have all these services, and it's just for you. Nobody else but for you. Trying to make them feel valued because they're so devalued and so just all these things are ripped from them. So you have to it's just rebuilding, essentially, and just pouring that into them, and then that starts the process. It's a long process. We've had girls for years, but if you stick with it, the good things will happen.
Well, they have a lot they need to deal with, so you're mending the broken, and that's where I'm just watching that video. I'm going back to that because that's where my heart, like I was so heavy afterwards, because it's just knowing that you're out there doing what you're doing. Just it makes me feel so much better after watching that video, because you sit there and you're like, well, what can I do? You're dealing with, you're able to have them hand on hand every day and to be able to be a light to them. And,
Right.
there was one lady on there who was a heroin addict, and she was just to the point where you'd pass her on the street and people would judge her and be like, oh, that's a life she wants to live. But if you heard her words when she was in jail, and she said to, I think it was her mother, father, I don't even know if she had a mother, she was talking to somebody and she said, I feel so dirty. She's
Yeah.
like, I can't, and it makes me want to cry right now. Like just the energy around her, like she was literally like, I feel
Mm-hmm.
so dirty. And no matter how much heroin I take, it will not wash it away. No matter how many showers I take. She's like, you don't know how many people I've been with and what I've had to do. She's like, no one's going to love me. I can't have a life after this. And so I just want everybody to walk away with a different perspective and a different heart for this lifestyle. And
Yeah.
I'm hoping that I'm going to post the Genesis Project above so people can link to your page on
Hmm.
Facebook. You also have an Instagram, Facebook, and then we'll put an email up there too in order to contact you. Because what I'm hoping, people that are looking for help in their area, whether you're on the East Coast to the West Coast, Texas, wherever you are, and you're looking to help these women, maybe you can start a Genesis Project in your area, and Andy can help you with the foundation of where to start.
Right.
Also, if you're looking and you want to lend a helping hand to Andy and the Genesis Project, please reach out to him because, and if you need any resources that I've watched, I'd love to send anybody some resources so you can just see why, after meeting Andy and just researching and listening to everything he sent to me, why my heart was so heavy in a totally different light and a totally different perspective on sex trafficking and the prostitutes and the women involved. And so, Andy, with that, I want to move on to where you're at today. Okay, where you're
Okay.
at today. When last time I talked to you, when we first started talking, it was back in March, and then I had,
Yeah.
taken a break, and now I relaunched the show, and now you're up to 277 women. And
Yeah.
at first we were at 250, now we're at 277, which congratulations.
Thanks.
And I just kind of want to get into right now. We kind of talked about what some of these women are doing now and where they're at and what your next step is.
Well, yeah, 277 have come through the door, and I don't think what I've done. We also keep stats. We have almost close to 3,000. We're upgrading our website, but we keep stats of repeat visits. So when the girls come through, that's their initial come through. Then we build an action plan for them. What steps do we need to do to get you out of this situation and in living a fulfilling, successful, healthy life? So we start that process with them. Then they come back. So they come back with programs, and it's just essentially when I talk about it, it's like raising kids.
Yeah.
There's no easy way to do this, and I think maybe that's why there isn't very many resources for them, direct resources, because it is such a daunting process. When you say, you know, they're so broken, they're so damaged, there's nothing I can do. But there is something you can do. There's organizations out there like ours that are doing it, volunteer, prayer, or financial. All that stuff helps, but it's a long process of raising children, and it's just raising them because they, like the 12-year-old where she got ripped from where she got ripped from. Despite the trauma, you have to deal with just basic life skills. They don't know how to cook. They don't know how to wash clothes, hygiene, etiquette, all that stuff, how to deal with job training. So now, today, we have all these programs, just one program, and that deals with different things. We have paid internships. So the girls that are coming on a regular basis, we will pay them to teach them how to do something. We have a barista program. We're building a salon program. We have a boutique in the drop-in center. It's like a little thrift store boutique. They can run the boutique, and they would learn how to do retail sales. And so we have them come in there and do an internship. We'll pay them to learn, and then we try to place them in a job. We'll do mock interviews and all these different things to try to get them in a steady, good paying job. We're doing that right now. We're doing on the law enforcement end. I partner with everybody in law enforcement. I have good friends with the FBI. We're partnering with them. I'm on the Child Exploitation Task Force, which is a task force. The FBI has over 100 of them all over the country. So they run it, and the local agencies are made up of the task force. So I'm one of the task force members in this area. So I have what I'm trying to do is not only educate public, but educate law enforcement. Because law enforcement, we've had the same mentality for a long time too. It's changing, but it still has a long ways to go. So now, when we do these stings, we're having a sting next week. Matter of fact, now all the chiefs of police, and I was fortunate to speak at a commander's college the other day, where leadership chiefs and sheriffs and commanders and captains go and they get educated on leadership. And they had a graduation, and they had me speak at it, and they gave to the charity. So now I have all these connections with chiefs and different agencies. So they contacted me, hey, we're going to do this thing, this prostitution thing. Would you want some of your people to come over if we bring these girls to give resources? So they might not know very much about what I do, but they know enough to call me to do it. So it's all these great things are happening. So with law enforcement, we're going to start a 24/7 call out soon, where law enforcement can call us, or a call out system that I'm building 24/7, because it's a 24/7 problem. And a lot of times, the time that the girls need the resources is not available. And if you miss that window, you might lose them. So I'm trying to build this 24/7 call out service. The 277 girls. So we had, as you can imagine, the damage that's happened to them. It's not, like I said, it's not, you can't do it through a 12-step program. You can't do it through a counseling session once a week. It's a real intensive, comprehensive A to Z type process where you got to walk it out. And it's mostly relationships. Our case manager builds relationships. If I have brought them in, because we're big enough now that where I don't bring everybody in. The girls come in from referrals. We had a stint from probably 2014 to 2016 where most of the girls that came in from referrals from other girls on the street. To say, hey, I know this place that can help you out. And they would bring them in themselves, which was amazing. I thought that was great. Just so some of the girls now are out of the lifestyle. They one's married, one's been on mission trips, one's getting married right now. They have jobs, they have careers. One owns their own business. And like I said, I'm starting this Survivor Speakers Board. A lot of the girls have been asking me, I want to share my story. I want to share my story. So I'm creating this Speakers Board so they can do that. And like the girl that I was telling you about, she felt just so empowered, and it was so healing, I think, for her too. And she was just on cloud nine. She's like, I feel so good. She couldn't even tell me. She said, I feel good by just what she just did with the FBI and what she spoke at this event. So
you're giving the women their power back, their voice.
Giving their voice back.
Yes.
They had a voice for so long. And even if they did have a voice, nobody believed them.
Exactly.
And so they couldn't explain. It's very complicated that this fraud, force, and coercion goes on. And what people don't realize is, they can't just walk away. You can't just walk away. Because what I say when I do my training is think about yourself. Just think about your own personal self right now. What do you have? You have a family, you have a house, you have a job, do you have an education, do you have all these things? Now start taking those away from you. I'm going to take those away from you. Where would you be and what would you do and how would you function and live? And most people are like, well, I don't know because I never thought of that. Exactly. So if you flip that, put yourself in their situation, despite the trauma and the abuse that most of them have gone through, take that away. Then if you throw heroin and drugs into this whole mess, man, talk about throwing wrenches in a machine, it screws up everything. So it's a very hard, daunting, long process of recovery, but it's possible. We have girls that are recovering. That's why it just takes a long time. You just gotta, keep pushing on.
Well, where do they go to help you? And especially since, it does take a long time and resources and everything. And I know since we've talked, you've never once asked me to ask for help from the viewers or anything. I just wanted to get your story out there, and then that's exactly what you wanted. But at the same point, I would really like to get your story out there, but have everybody be educated at the same time so they can contact you and help out in any way they can, whether it's resources. Oh my gosh, my phone. I'm trying to talk through it, but this is what happens when you go live. So my phone is talking to us. Sorry guys. That is so embarrassing, but all right. Lost my train of thought. So with that, you weren't asking for any resources, but I want to bring people to your page. And if anybody wants to help out, please contact Andy. Andy, will you give them emails?
Yes.
Okay.
So the Genesis Project, you can Google the Genesis Project, but amazingly, there's a lot of things called the Genesis Project, so I've done it before. But we're out there pretty prevalent now, but it's genesisnow.org. So Genesis, just like the chapter in the Bible, genesisnow.org, and everything is on there. All our information, the email is info@gpseattle.net. That's the main email address is info@gpseattle.net. And we don't get I've tried. It's not for a lack of trying, but I tried to write grants and I tried to apply for government and state, and I couldn't get any of them for whatever reason. So all of our funding is local and is just individual. It's either individual people or churches, or we just had our Night of Hope dinner auction a couple weeks ago. It was really cool. We had a lot of people show up, and we that's how we raised money to do the bills and stuff like that. So I think God's providing very generously to us because I think we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. But obviously, if you want to help and give financially, I'll take it, because the vision is not just to be local. The vision is not just to have a drop-in center in SeaTac. The vision is to have a transitional house and a long-term house. That's the complete vision of the Genesis Project. But beyond that is to create a blueprint, because a lot of this is just brand new territory, especially with the law enforcement aspect. There's several organizations. Most organizations in trafficking are awareness. They do awareness, which is great. But the difficult part is direct services, and there's very few of those because of just what I've told you about. It's expensive, and it's not easy. It's not easy to go walk this life out with a broken person trying to help them. So there's not a lot of resources, and there's not a lot of help in that area, and I understand why, because it's difficult. But anyway, so yeah, aside from the transitional house and the long-term house, is to create a blueprint that can be duplicated in other places. So essentially, we're plowing the ground. I've been plowing it since 2006, trying to find the best practices. Every girl is different. Every story is different, just like we as human beings. God created us all differently with different everything. So there's not a package where everybody can be healed this way. It's not that way. But we can create some best practices in the way we set up the project. So I'm willing to help anybody who wants to do this. I don't care if they call it Genesis Project or whatever they want to call it. If they're helping girls, they're helping girls, and I'm cool with that. But the idea was to develop protocols, policies, stuff that we went through, trial and error. And so the other people who want to do this and want to have a heart for it don't have to go through all the garbage we went through, and have some success early on, and not, we're plowing new ground out here. So we're doing it, and then we'll put it together so you don't have to do it later on. So that's the big vision, to be placing it all over the place where it needs to be placed.
And you heard it right here with Andy Connor, and he's plowed the ground for all of you. He's out there helping thousands and thousands of women every day and changing lives. And now I hope that since you've listened to Andy, and it might spark something in you to want to learn a little bit more, you can always message me. I can send you over the resources that Andy sent me, so you can understand sex trafficking more. And also, if you want to, start your own Genesis, or that this is, or of somebody who's in sex trafficking, maybe you'll look at it differently and try to maybe reach out to Andy and see how you can move forward to help.
Right.
Andy, you have just been so patient with me over the months, and just building the relationship with you and understanding what you're doing. And I am just so thankful that there's people out there like you and your wife who are putting your heart and soul into helping these women, because I know that I may have a heart soul for them, but at this point, there was nothing I could do, especially after watching that movie. I felt so helpless. But what I do want to do, like we talked about earlier, is put all your information above. You also mentioned where they can get a hold of you. And is there anything else you'd like to add before we close this out?
I just, regarding our website, we have a lot of information on our website. So, and we're revamping it now to even make it more user friendly. So anybody who's curious or wants to learn more, we have a lot of just trafficking information. We have videos on there, and like you said, you can contact us. The only thing I would probably want to end with is just, I was the same way. Matter of fact, when I was arresting these girls, I didn't think of anything. I'm right in the thick of it. I'm talking to them. I'm arresting them. I'm looking at what's going on. I know they have pimps and all these things, but it's still, the mentality is still there with law enforcement, with the public in general. All I would say is just think about that they're not there, regardless of what they say, even what they say to me. You know, the standard protocol for a girl when I talk to them as a police officer is, "Do you have a pimp?" No. That is standard answer. They're trained, all that's trained. But that's just one of the things that they're forced to do. It's one of the things that they're, even if they weren't forced, they were tricked into it somehow. I just want people to understand that they can't just walk away. They need assistance. Now, some don't need as much assistance as others. The girl, Lisa, in the one that you watched, who's been a heroin addict for a long time, she was trafficked at age 12 or 13. She was pulled out of her home. One of her best friends was murdered by her pimp right in front of her. She has gone through hell, and she's unfortunately still in life, but I still see her. I saw her a couple nights ago, and I'm still trying to reach her. And I think if she was a girl in the jail, if she would have such, nobody's too far gone to be helped. I think God can bring anybody back from anything, but she would have such an amazing story if we can get her. And I'm not going to give up on her, but I just, everyone that I work with knows me, knows how I deal with these girls. So everybody knows. All my friends, all my colleagues, they know just because I've been working with them. So they know exactly that there is a difference. They're not just by choice. It's not just in your face, I'll do this. They can't just walk away. They know this stuff because they're with me all the time. And whenever something comes up, they'll call me. Dispatchers will dispatch me specifically to these things because they know what I'm doing. I'm just trying to spread that knowledge, that understanding that there's, a lot of, sometimes I even forget, a lot of people don't know the stats. I mean, America is one of the biggest trafficking places in the world. Yep. People don't know that. There's hundreds of thousands of girls, and it's not girls coming in from Russia or Asia. That happens. They're homegrown girls being trafficked in the United States. Homegrown. When Craigslist happened and Backpage happened, you can go to every city, there's on Backpage. It's off now because the federal government took it off, but every city is listed. Every state and cities are listed all over the country, and every one of those have ads for sex in it before they took it down. So it's everywhere. People just don't realize it because it's not a light is not being shined on it, and it's like a taboo subject, or it's the victimless crime thing.
Mm-hmm. Or that's what they want to be doing.
Yeah, they want to be doing it. Mm-hmm. So it's not the case. So that's the only thing I would want people to take away. Just think about it. That the girls that are in this lifestyle, you see a girl walking the street, that girl most likely has a very bad background, and the choices, there's some choices that she made, but most of it was not made by her, and the things that she went through that brought her to where she's walking right now in front of you is not one of those things. This is what I want to do. This is, girls don't, people have said this in interviews all the time. You don't wake up thinking, I think I want to be a prostitute. That's, they don't think that way. That's not what they think. I mean, a girl in one of my interviews said, I asked her, like I always do, how did you get yourself in this? And she goes, well, I just didn't wake up doing this. And it seems obvious, but some people just don't think that way. So it's a long process of how they got to where they got. Now they need help. We need to help them get back out.
Well, and that's why you're here, and that's why we have the Genesis Project, and that's why you're here to educate too, and shining the light on this, and listening to. And her name was Lisa, and her phone call changed my perspective because I just I'm like, oh my,
very honest and very. Where it doesn't matter how many showers I take, I can't get clean. She feels so dirty inside and out, that she can't clean herself. So she takes heroin to make that feeling go away.
And she didn't just wake up that one day like that, like you said. I mean, there's just so many choices that other people made around her, or choices that she made, but nobody deserves to live in their choice, or to live in someone else's mistake, or to live in their mistake, or whatever. Nobody deserves that. And so I just hope that whoever's watching this right now, you can walk away with a different perspective on prostitution, sex trafficking. Educate yourself, especially if you have children or you have daughters. In one of the movies I watched, there was a daughter who just was bored, and she ran away, and She just
Mm-hmm.
wanted to be a teenager and she got
Yeah.
caught up in sex trafficking to make money. And then her whole life from that point forward was just of shame. And she even went back to it after coming home to her parents. So,
Right.
just educating yourself before you judge and educating yourself before you have an opinion about something. So I hope
Right.
that all of you can go to the Genesis Project, go to their website. I'm going to put all the links above. Andy is going to answer all your comments and questions below. We're here to, if you direct questions to me that I don't know how to answer, Andy, I know that you're available to help us out with those. So Andy,
Sure.
I want to say thank you, and thank you to your wife too for the time, energy, and the heart, and just the undertaking that you've taken. Because I know that taking on a journey like this is not easy, and I know that just attacks from all over can happen in your life, and there's a lot of different things that can happen. So I want to thank you for your time, your energy, and your love. And I've said it a million times, just because, guys, I've talked to Andy, I've watched his videos, and it changed my perspective and my life and made me look at things differently. So,
Well, I'm glad. I appreciate you and what you're doing. This is great. What you're getting these stories out. Not just mine, but all these other guys and what they've gone through. Unfortunately, our media today is they focus on the negative because that's what sells. But man, you're doing a great job with all these positive stories. It's just I'm so honored to be on your show. I appreciate you putting me on.
oh, well, thank you. Likewise, we'll spread the light together.
All right.
So, well,
Cool.
until next time, guys. If you're watching this right now, hashtag live. If you watched it on the replay, hashtag replay. If you know somebody who has a story that needs to be told, please contact me. We have the show Behind the Service, where we have first responders and military, and also Behind the Journey, where we have our overcomers, our visionaries, and I am here to share the stories that are untold that need to be told. So. Again, Andy Connor is my guest with the Genesis Project, and I am your host, Sunny Perry. And thank you for watching this episode 3 of Behind the Service. Until next time, bye.